Like,
Yeah.
So do you still have family?
Oh yes, that's my sister and my brother and my parents.
Hi, we're Dale and Donna Short. I'm sorry, I shouldn't probably speak for you. This is Dale, I'm Donna. But we've been married for 20 years and we have two wonderful boys that we're very proud of. Dylan, who's 16, and Derek is 11. And I'm the cook of the family, the whole family, the extended family. I usually hold all the holiday dinners and everything here, so that's what I enjoy doing.
And I'm the computer geek. I like to automate things. So welcome to our home, and I hope you enjoy the show.
We're Dave and Lisa Iselli. We're proud parents of David and Thomas and Ann Iselli. Lisa was a blind date 18 years ago.
It's true. And we felt called when invited to participate today because we have seen both sides of finances. We've been where our finances were very, very poor, and now we've come back to a place where we're in financial prosperity. So we felt called to be here today.
God is good.
Well, honey, here we are again, and we're dealing with pocket parables again, and dealing with truth about marriage, and we're going to be going through a financial series, and we're excited about that.
Yes, we'll be talking about identifying debt and managing your debts, and also how to share your finances and you're sharing your resources. Also, we'll be dealing with the reward of unifying your budgets and your money together.
You know, that's really going to be important too, because in this day and age in society, there's a lot of stress that's going on in the area of finances, and couples are really trying to make ends meet. You know, so therefore we have to really, hopefully we'll be able to impart some knowledge here based on those financial areas.
Yes, and our last topic will be talking about planning for the future, and I think that's very important. And as we sit around the table, I'm sure that our couples today will have something to share with us about planning for the future.
And you know, planning for the future, that has really worked great for us. I mean, you know, we just celebrated, 25 years of marriage.
Wonderful.
You know, and again, we're still on our honeymoon, and still in love with my bride of my youth, and we had to plan.
Oh yes,
we literally had to plan, and we'll talk about some of those things as we go into this particular series. We are today, and we're going to go into our topic today. We have the Shorts and we have the Isellis that are here with us at this table today, honey. We really have over 60 years of marriage. Wow. And that's a lot of knowledge, and that's a lot of wealth of knowledge. So let's just kind of go into identifying and managing debt. When we think about that, we really think about how important really is it of a credit score? Because when you talk about debt, when you talk about credit, it goes back to what? Your credit score. So, Isellis, what would you have to say about credit scores?
Never gave them too much thought. I mean, you need it with so much in this world. Frankly, I can't stand that. It's so cumbersome.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to have a good credit score because it's your, it's the number equivalent of your financial picture. So it tells people a little bit about you, represents you.
And you know, that's really true because Senia and I, we always talk about your credit score really is you.
It's your identity, it's who you are. And that's how the creditors view you, your peers view you. How can you obtain things without knowing your credit score? Sometimes we go through life and we forget that we do, have to purchase things. But if we never stop and take the time to look at our credit scores, then how can we obtain the knowledge? So today we're going to be talking about obtaining knowledge. Mm-hmm. Dealing with credit scores, learning how to just tap into those things that ordinarily it wouldn't be a general conversation, but we found out in marriage how important it is to touch and agree and to know about credit scores. Yes. So the Shorts?
Because especially when buying a house. Credit score affects you majorly when you especially buy a home because that it's dependent if you need to put 20% down if your score is not good enough and you need that PMI insurance or if you don't need the PMI insurance, if you have enough credit, the credit's good enough that you don't have to, which praise the Lord, we didn't have to have that where our credit was good when we purchased our home. So, but we just learned a lot about how your credit score just affects everything.
And you have to be careful with your credit score. Just because you have a good credit score doesn't mean you need to go out and buy everything. When we first started getting our credit, I noticed that we started getting a flood of credit card applications and 0% financing, and
this was from young, because we've been together from 16 and 18 years old. And so, we've been
And
together.
when I was young, I got caught up in that, and I was applying for every credit card. And at one time, I think we had like 13 or 14
He's the
credit
spender,
cards.
I'm the saver, and I kept saying, honey, can we, back off on this a little bit, because it's down the road, and at 18, 20 years old, you don't think it's going to affect you down the road at 40, and it does.
Donna, there was one thing that you mentioned, the PMI. Can you all share that with our audience? What exactly when you mentioned the PMI?
Well, PMI is when you buy a house. I forget. Do you remember what the PMI actually stands for? Private mortgage insurance. Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
If you don't have 20% down for your home, whatever your let's say you're going for a $100,000 home. If you don't have 20% down, there's two things you can do. You can do the PMI, or sometimes if the loans are big enough, they can split them into 2 loans for you.
Yeah.
So and it's just really affects you. Your house payment is a lot more when you have to go the PMI way. And
Because we looked into it when we bought our home, and we decided that we didn't want to pay that extra insurance, so we did the 20% down. But that's something that you have to consider. You have to save for that and plan for that.
Well, you know what, when you said that, the 20% down, that simply means that in this area of managing debt and identifying your debt and savings plans, 20% of a $100,000 home is going to be $20,000.
Well, but
So-
on top of that, you've got your closing costs and all those other, your appraisal costs, and you can add a good $2,000 to $3,000 on top of that, and you have to have that, or some people will let you roll that in, but that just makes your mortgage payment a little bit higher.
So you have to think about all those things
You
and
have
realize
to-
that there's other things that influence, what your buying decisions.
What has been some of your experiences as you were purchasing your first home many years ago? Is it something that you can give to our audience? Because there are a lot of individuals are out there that are shopping for homes right now. There's some young families that they're getting into marriage. This is their first year. This is a great market for it.
Oh, yes.
But at
That's
the
a
same
great
time,
buyer.
oh, absolutely. But at the same time, there is a process. So can you share anything?
You know what? When I take people looking for houses or commercial property, whatever it is, I impart to them that I want it to be a blessing and not a burden in their life. And I ask them to take some prayerful consideration into what they're about to do, because it's not a shirt from J.C. Penney that you can take back in 3
Correct.
days. And give big decisions, especially the big decisions, some real prayerful consideration. Talk with your spouse about it. I think Lisa looked at 50 homes or something wacky like that. She was a little hesitant.
Dave was not my realtor.
She was a little hesitant on the whole process, because it is a big deal.
And I think it's important that you, along with prayerful consideration, that you're really looking at your lifestyle and your finances and really putting consideration into what you can afford. Oftentimes, you're told that you can afford a mortgage, but is that a true, accurate picture of what you really comfortably as a family can afford?
Yeah, you're right, you're right.
Yes.
And I guess
That's
that's
the
the
key
word.
word.
That's the key word, is
Comfortable.
comfortably be able to afford, because many times we get out here and we overextend ourselves, especially when we're purchasing a home. We look at it, of course, as an investment, but now at this day and age, many folks are what? They're underwater. Not that it's still not an investment, because it is. It will always be an investment,
Right.
because the value of your home is always going to come
Must
back.
circle back.
But I tell you, for couples, and you're trying to get into looking at your credit scores and what have you, you need to first look at what? Your credit review. What's on your credit picture? Many times people, they'll go and they'll be with the realtor, they'll go to the financial institution, but they have not yet looked at what's on their credit score or credit record.
You talk about being comfortable with your situation. Like when we purchased our home, I fell in love with our house. And we made an offer with what we were comfortable with. And they didn't accept it. And at that point, I started thinking about what can we do, or maybe we can afford a little bit more mortgage and things like that. But we backed off because we just didn't feel comfortable. We didn't think it was the right
Because
thing.
we knew, we moved from a smaller home to a little bit larger, and I knew that all the bills would go up as far as the heating and air and things of that
Those are things you
nature.
take into
Things you have to
consideration.
take into consideration. Your utility bills are going to go like this if you go into a little bit bigger home. And so I kept telling him, I kept saying, if we don't get this house, that's, we both fell in love with it.
But you know what?
And-
But you know what? That's the key, though, is that it's the big picture. The big picture is not just the house. As Dave, you said when you're dealing with even your clients, that it's not just the house, but it's all of the other financial burdens that could come into play with that home.
Right,
Right.
utility bills going up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still want to go to the movies on Friday night with my wife.
Your date night.
Yeah, my date night, yeah.
There was one thing that I noticed, that when we first got married, we were young, and
Yeah, we were young.
we were young and in
25
love.
years.
Yes. And one of the
20
things,
for us, so.
one of the things that I noticed is that I did not have a credit card at all.
She was
And
a
I-
saver, I tell you.
And I thought that that was the best thing. You don't have any debt.
I had all the credit cards.
Oh, yes, sure.
Yeah, I was like you.
However, but I learned that even in the midst of that you have to establish some type of credit.
It's a very
You
important,
do.
yes.
Because that's what they look at. They look at your credit, how often do you pay your bills, how consistent you are in paying your bills. And I had to learn that. So I went out and got my first credit card right after I got married. So I was very happy about that. But I've learned that how it's important, because that depicts who you are. That's your identity and that's your character. They look at that. So that was a very valid point.
So then what you're saying is that, credit is not a bad thing.
Correct.
As we try to paint
No.
the picture.
You have to
But-
have credit because, and the funny thing is, like I said, he and I have been together for 30 years actually. We've been married for 20. We've been together since we were 16
Yeah.
and 18. And so we've been tied together financially and everything since then. And it was funny, I worked until we had our children, and he had worked, and of course he had went to college and things like that. And at one time, I had a few credit cards in my own name also. And at one time, he had bigger work history, and my credit score was better than his, and we just kind of laughed about that.
Oh, another one, let's get it.
Look how important I am.
So the debt to credit ratio was not right.
So I had to kind of reel him
Oh,
in
yes.
a little bit from that, but it's important because even myself, you don't think these things would happen, but even, if I were to become a widow or anything, I would have to have
That's
my
true.
own credit score. I can't just rely on his.
Correct.
You're tied together, but you can't just rely. You have to have individual credit scores and then your
Oh,
marriage
yes.
credit scores.
I had said earlier that I didn't give my credit score much thought. If I used credit, I would pay my bills and you end up with a great credit score. But today, more than 20 years ago, employers look at your credit score.
Yes, they do.
Insurance companies
Oh,
are
yes,
now
they
looking at
do.
your
Yes.
credit score.
Mhm.
It is kind of a reflection
Oh,
of,
yes, it
of
is.
the way you conduct your finances.
And I think that's a good point. If you're paying your bills on time and you're behaving how you're supposed to, you don't really give it much thought. But sometimes you still need to go out and take a peek every now and again, because sometimes there's an error on your credit report.
Oh.
And you need to go out there and look
Absolutely.
and make
Fraud.
sure that
No,
it,
nothing ever happens wrong.
that it looks good and that it's still a true picture
A
of
true
who you
score,
are.
yes.
Right.
And you
because-
can identify, you can always get a free credit.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
there's
you can go
3
once a year.
reporting agencies too that you can go through to check your individual scores, and they recommend, and I really would say too, do that once a year, just to make sure.
Around tax time,
Because
something
now,
like that.
too, nowadays with all of the fraud, the stealing of your identities, identity theft.
Well, and that's a good point there, and that's how we want to really deal with this is talk about the credit score. We're talking about reviewing your credit really on an annual basis, and that there are multiple credit agencies out there. So we're going to like sort of stop here, and we're going to say to our audience that we'll be back because there's going to be another time that we're going to talk about more financial issues as we look at dollars and cents.
Teenage boys, super hard.
Yes.
Very true.
So Lee, some of the key points today was identifying your credit scores.
Also, you know, you need to pull your annual credit report. I mean, there are multiple agencies that you can pull those credit reports from because actually you need to know exactly what's on your credit report.
And also that your credit score identifies who you are. It depicts your character, it identifies who you are, and it shows to creditors that you're honest and you're faithful and you're able to pay your debt, your bills on time, and that's some of the things that they're looking for.
And that is your integrity. Your integrity. That's exactly what your signature is. That's who you are, just like you said. And I'll tell you again that credit affects everything in your life. So credit is the key.